Several laws were passed in 2024. Some had to do with healthcare, others establishing safety on the roads. Here's a breakdown of what was new in 2024 and what will be going into effect in the new year. Lawmakers were busy throughout 2024. Here's a recap of some of the laws that got the governor's signature of approval this year. New York's Move Over law expanded. Previously, highway drivers had to switch lanes or slow down when passing a first responder or emergency vehicle. Now, drivers will have to move over for all vehicles. This includes passenger vehicles. State Senator Leah Webb was a sponsor for this bill, and she said this will ensure that everyone can be protected in an emergency situation.
Even if it's just to check a tire, whatever the issue may be, the speed in which, cars, other vehicles are going by, that the wind factor alone, creates a safety hazard.
Moving over to the classroom, Governor Hochul signed legislation that requires all school districts to mitigate extreme heat conditions. The bill establishes 88 degrees as the maximum temperature in classrooms, which means students and staff will be removed from the space if it reaches that temperature. Districts will have to relieve heat discomfort when the classroom reaches 82 degrees. That might include turning off electronics and overhead lights, along with pulling down blinds and shades. Air conditioning is not mandatory to have in New York schools. However, Superintendent of the Maine Annual School District, Jason Van Fossen, says installing AC in their district is a necessity.
Well, I think if anyone goes back to their years in school, sitting in a hot, sweaty, uncomfortable room, it's uncomfortable, number one. And number two, physiologically, there are impacts to heart rate, to breathing, to cognitive functioning when you're in a warm environment.
School districts also have a new holiday on the academic calendar. That is the Lunar New Year. Hochul's legislation ensures that school will not be in session on the holiday. She says this is part of her commitment to support, protect, and celebrate New York's Asian American and Pacific Islander community. Hochul also signed several bills this year regarding health care. We'll get into the one about prenatal care a little bit later. Right now, let's focus on one about ambulance service. This legislation requires Medicaid reimbursement for ambulance services. This is for when treatment in place is administered or when the patient is transported to a facility that is not a general hospital. New York is one of 39 states that does not deem ambulance service as an essential service. This means there is no state or federal grants available to mitigate operation costs, putting some services in crisis. New Berlin Mayor Peter Lennon saw this crisis firsthand when people opted out of a transport.
That means our ambulance service has made a call, spent maybe 3 hours stabilizing, going on out, stabilizing the patient, making them feel comfortable again, and then they come back to the station with no revenue.
This legislation was Hochul's response to the ongoing crisis, ensuring that ambulance service has a chance to survive. And speaking of chances, the governor's Clean Slate Act went into effect this year, which she says gives those with a criminal record a second chance. The law seals certain criminal records following a person's release from jail. Eligible misdemeanor convictions will be sealed 3 years after release, and eligible felony convictions will be sealed 8 years after release. This all on the condition that the individual convicted of the offense has not committed an additional crime. Governor Hochul says this will allow those formerly incarcerated to get better jobs, housing, and education.
And as we know, if people end up in financial desperation, they may recommit crimes. That's not what we want to have happen because we want to make sure people feel and are safe in the state.
The Clean Slate Act will not seal records of individuals convicted of sex crimes, murder, or other non-drug Class A felonies. To address the state's ongoing opioid and overdose epidemic, a set of 3 pieces of legislation will expand New Yorkers' access to life-saving tools. The first increases access to fentanyl test strips. The second will equip all public institutions and state buildings with opioid antagonists. And the third in this group will authorize healthcare professionals, including pharmacists, to test for xylazine.
We will not condemn those struggling with addiction. We'll offer them help.
Now let's talk about some laws that we will see in 2025. New York's prenatal leave policy was signed into law in April and will officially go into effect January 1st. This policy ensures expecting mothers to receive paid time off for any pregnancy-related appointments. The law will mandate that employers provide up to 20 hours of time off. New Yorkers can expect to have a little more money in their pockets because of an increase in minimum wage. Starting January 1st, the minimum wage for New York City, Long Island, and Westchester will be $16.50, and for the rest of the state, it will be $15.50. On Election Day, New York voters also passed Proposition 1, better known as the Equal Rights Amendment. This is an amendment to the state's constitution. Currently, the Constitution prohibits discrimination based on race, color, and creed. The amendment will now add ethnicity, national origin, age, disability, sex, including sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy, pregnancy outcomes, and reproductive health care and autonomy to the state's constitution. The Companion Care Animal Standards Act will go into effect in December 2025. The bill seeks to hold backyard breeders accountable. It establishes state standards for all entities that house homeless cats and dogs so the animals have a safe and clean place to stay in while they wait adoption. It also means these entities have to be licensed by the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets. Finally, a change in 2025. The COVID-19 quarantine leave legislation will expire on July 31st. This was created in response to the coronavirus outbreak and was designed to financially help employees who were subject to mandatory and precautionary quarantine. And that was your recap of some of the legislation passed in 2024 and what's to come in the new year.